Welcome to another immigration art video. My name is Art Serratelli. Our immigration law group is full service. Any immigration issue of any sort, we handle it. If you have an immigration concern, give us a call. We've got clients all over the United States because, thank goodness, federal law, immigration law, is what governs every single immigration case, no matter what state it's in. The topic of this video is self-sponsored green cards. First of all, what does that mean? It means you don't need a family member to sponsor you for a green card. You don't need an employer to sponsor you for a green card. You're so special. You are so important that we, as a country, as the United States of America, as a policy decision, we have decided we want you so badly here permanently that you don't need anyone to sponsor you. Your accomplishments, your achievements, your high intelligence, your high level of creativity, you and your credentials speak for themselves, and that's what sponsors you for a green card. This category, as an aside, may sound like it's geared toward postdoc researchers and scientists, and quite honestly, that's the majority of people who apply in this category. You could be an engineer, you could be a biochemist, you could be a nanoscientist, you could be a Monte Carlo probability statistician using supercomputers to calculate things so complicated. You could be a world-class musician, a jazz musician. If you are a creative and innovative businessman and you make a lot of money and you're using tools and ideas and procedures that are unique that you came up with, you as a businessman can get one of these. As another introductory concept before we talk about exactly what a self-sponsored green card is, I think it's important to know green card categories are stratified by preference. If you're in an EB-1 preference category, an employment-based EB, employment-based preference 1 green card category, you will have the shortest time in waiting to receive the green card. So the higher the preference category, the shorter the wait for the actual green card process to take place and for you to receive the actual green card. There are two types of self-sponsored green cards. The first is an EB-1, employment-based first preference green card. It's called the extraordinary ability category. And the second type of self-sponsored green card is the national interest waiver, which is an EB-2, second preference employment-based green card. Now let's go back and review each one of those in turn. The extraordinary ability self-sponsored green card is a category for someone who has risen to the very top of their profession. They're the best of the best. They are among, let's put it that way, you're among the best of the best in your profession. Perhaps you've won a Nobel Prize. If that doesn't seem realistic, well, then there are other things we can point to on your CV that indicate you are, in fact, a person with extraordinary ability. For example, if you haven't won a Nobel Prize, then we look to things like this. For example, have you published lots of scientific papers in the course of your career? Have you presented scientific reports and findings and papers at conferences? Has your work been cited by others in furtherance of their work? Has your work been actually implemented somewhere where a process or a procedure has changed because of your work? Has your work earned a patent? Have you, in your position as being someone who is extraordinary, judged the work of others? Have you participated in the review of articles submitted to a peer-reviewed journal, and have you reviewed articles and suggested that they be published or not? Have you been the subject of articles written by others that were published in either trade magazines or newspapers or trade websites that are customarily read by other professionals in your field? Have you been written up in the local newspaper? Have you been written up in a newspaper of record, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal? Have you received, if not a Nobel Prize, have you received any other prizes or awards that are internationally or nationally recognized? And when I say nationally, it could be nationally recognized in your home country or in America. Have you received memberships in organizations due to your accomplishments? Not a membership organization where you pay money for an annual fee to become a member. I mean an organization where you cannot be a member unless you've accomplished something. One of the final and most important elements to prove is that your work, which makes you extraordinary, is really, in fact, extraordinary. Your work is groundbreaking. Your work is cutting edge. Your work is so unique, so scholarly, so influential that you, without a doubt, have clearly made it to the top of the top, and you are among the best of your profession. So how do you prove that? With reference letters. You get your associates, and the broader the base of associates, the better. So your colleagues at work, your immediate work right now, the guy down the hall. If you get too many of those, however, the government says, oh, come on, well, these people work right down the hall. Of course they're going to say nice things about you. They have to see you in the lunchroom. They're not going to badmouth you in writing to help you. So to expand your base of letters, go beyond where you work. Go back in history. You're perhaps a thesis advisor for your master's degree. Perhaps colleagues in the field right now, but who are at other universities or other organizations in the United States or in another country. It would be ideal to have letters from people in academia, from the private sector, from the government, and from institutions in those categories from all over the world. The more the merrier, the bigger the better. So this category, in my opinion, is a great category if you've got enough accomplishments in each of the subcategories. If you don't, it's a tough category to satisfy, simply because you have to be the best of the best. You have to be among the best in the world. It might not be as hard to prove as you think, but in my opinion, it's harder than the next category of self-sponsored green card, which is someone who is working in the national interest. If you're working in the national interest, you can sponsor yourself for a green card. And the category is called the National Interest Waiver. What does that mean? Waiver? Waiving what? Well, it's as simple as this. If you are performing scientific or other tasks that are in the national interest of the United States of America, we don't want to place an ad in the paper for some American to do your job, because you are the only one doing your job. It is you that's working in our national interest. Therefore, we don't need to place an ad for anybody. We already found that person who's working in the national interest, and that person is you. So we waive the requirement for advertising. We waive the requirement for a labor certification because your work is in the national interest. The question becomes, what is work in the national interest? What does that mean? Work in the national interest is simply defined as work that is, one, inherently important. The work itself is really important. And two, it is important everywhere in the United States. It's universally applicable everywhere, from West Coast to East Coast, from North to South, everywhere. I'll give you some examples that we've had in our office. Perhaps you're working on, as a civil engineer, you're working on the science behind recycled materials to be used in a more environmentally friendly way. You recycle materials to build infrastructure, highways, bridges. If we can build bigger and better and stronger roads and bridges with recycled material that have a smaller carbon footprint, that's in the national interest. Or if you're developing medical devices that can help people who have lost a limb in war, if you are developing medical devices that can measure lazy eye in small children before other devices could detect that, if you are a nanoscientist and you're creating smaller and faster and stronger materials to shrink the size of technology so that one day in my wristwatch I could have an entire computer, if you're a nanoscientist that can give me a computer in my wristwatch, that is in the national interest. You are an expert in data transmission and you can make the data that's transmitted through the internet smaller in size so the current infrastructure of the internet, the cell towers, the switches, the various wires and fiber optic cables that connect everything together, if you can get information through the current infrastructure faster, that's in the national interest. So now the question becomes, how do you prove that your work is in the national interest? Are you ready? It's the same information, the same types of documents you would submit for an extraordinary ability case, but you just rearrange them and present them under different category headings. So for example, under the extraordinary ability category, each type of evidentiary requirement is a separate subsection of our support letter. In this category, we simply take the same evidence but group it into 3 categories. Why is your work inherently important? Why? What makes what you do in the national interest? What's so good about it? What's so good about what you're doing? 1. 2, the second evidentiary category is that your work is inherently important all over the United States of America. Your work will help people in Oregon, and in Florida, and in Illinois, and in Texas, and in New England, and in the desert Southwest. So those 2 categories are pretty straightforward. The third category, why you? The third thing we have to prove is why you? Let's pretend that there is an American with the same exact educational credentials, not the same experience or work, but the same education you have. Why is your PhD in electrical engineering serving our national interest better than some hypothetical American with a PhD in electrical engineering? Well, that's how we win the case, with evidence that proves that, and you prove that with the reference letters. If you get someone from the United States government to say, yes, this work is in the national interest of the United States of America effort to explore space, or this work will advance medical technology to prolong the life and the health of our citizens. If you get the government to say that in a letter, your work is in the national interest. It's self-evident.